Nice.
Let me know when it's on. All right, we are live. Thank you everyone for joining us for this episode 4 for Behind Our Science. We are very excited to have everyone here join us for this live episode. We've been requested to actually do a live episode, and we're very excited about this one. You just have to bear with us. It's our first time doing a live episode, so it might be some minor troubleshooting that we might have to do. So welcome. Thank you so very much for watching our previous episodes. If it's your first time here, this is Behind Our Science, and my name is Roberto Mota. My co-hosts, Marina Anastasio, Daisy Shu, and Vic Meadows. Hopefully we'll try to bring some guests, try to talk about the COVID blues and going after COVID, post-COVID. How are you guys? How are you, Beck?
I'm good. I'm excited. I'm a teensy bit nervous, but ready to beat COVID blues.
That's great. How about you, Marina?
I'm doing well. So happy to be here and discuss this very important issue.
Yes, mental health is an important issue. We've recently been dealt with people in the field, scientists, researchers that have lost their lives or have either committed suicide. Some of these things are major implicators in what is currently going on. So we want to address those with some positive thoughts, resources, and sharing some stories from all of us over there. Also, Marina has now defended her thesis and is now a PhD. So that's a great congrats to the podcast. And we're really happy about that. And how about you, Daisy? How are you?
I'm good. I am excited to discuss this topic as well. COVID has dramatically affected all of our lives, and I'm just so curious to hear all these different perspectives today.
Yes, that's one of the major things that we want to hear. We have some very exciting guests. The first thing we want to go through is Daisy will be handling our live Twitter feed. So Daisy, explain a little bit about how the gift cards are going to be given away. I have them here, so go ahead.
Okay, so shortly after we've conducted some of the interviews, we'll be tweeting out some questions that we want you to answer, and the first person to answer these questions will be able to get one of these gift cards. So just keep a lookout for those tweets. We'll be putting them in throughout this episode.
Yes, we're going to be giving away 5 of these. We're going to make it really accessible. So we just want your perspectives, what people are listening to. We want to see if you guys are enjoying the episode, and then we're going to be getting some feedback from you guys, hopefully, and giving you guys some free coffee. So I'll talk about our first guest, which is an important person for all of us because we're part of the American Society of Investigative Pathology. This is Dr. Bill Coleman. He is a mentor. He is the executive officer for the ASIP. He is a great leader in the field. He was part of the University of North Carolina that I was gratefully part of, and he's been a great asset in the society. He's a great person, and we are very excited to have him here today. So hi, Dr. Bill Coleman. How are you?
Hi. Thanks for having me.
No, thanks for joining us. It's really exciting to have you here. We wanted to ask you a couple of things, and hopefully you'll give us some insights about how the society is actually dealing with the COVID blues, how other societies that we deal with, and now meetings that are moving forward after or moving past COVID. So the first one is, how did the society deal with COVID during all this past year and a half?
Yeah, well, it was really tough at the beginning because we were all set to go to San Diego for Experimental Biology 2020. I mean, we were just a month away from the meeting start when we had to cancel because of the onset of the pandemic. And it turns out that it's a lot more difficult to cancel a meeting than it is to plan a meeting and put on a meeting. And so it created, quite a bit of work on the staff side of things just to do the cancellation. And then, of course, when we started to plan for Experimental Biology 2021, we knew pretty far in advance that it was going to be virtual. But it was a different kind of meeting. It was the first time that we had done a really big meeting as a virtual meeting. And so it had a little bit of an extra learning curve associated with it. But I think it came off pretty well. And of course, in between, we had our PISA meeting for 2020 that was supposed to have been in Boston. We were really looking forward to going to Boston, and we had to convert it to a virtual meeting. But I think it turned out really nice, and we were actually able to accommodate more attendees than we could have face-to-face. So I think we're learning a lot of lessons, both around our meetings as well as around our other virtual events that we're doing, so that we're offering, a more extensive menu of events for people to attend and consume.
Yeah, I certainly was already at San Diego. We booked everything. We were so excited about it. We understand that the premise of canceling an event with such magnitude as EB, it takes major implications. But what about the things that you can take out of it? So what was one thing that you think was positive about learning from COVID and the ability to actually do a meeting? And what about a con that you actually found after dealing with COVID?
Well, I think starting with the negative first, a big meeting like experimental biology, this was coming up, in 2022, it'll be the 29th episode of experimental biology. And so a meeting like that sort of develops its own momentum. And fortunately for 2020, we had cancellation insurance, but the cancellation insurance policies that were associated with the meeting had just sort of rolled from year to year. And nobody really ever, bought those policies thinking that they would ever have to implement them, because we just couldn't imagine. And so now I think we think much more carefully about the potential interruptions to a face-to-face meeting. Obviously, if the convention center burns down, you can't have your meeting. And so what do you do? And so I think that, we did learn a lot about anticipating issues and then workarounds for those issues. On the positive side, I think that, the pandemic, it pushed us into the virtual event space for the other, not just for meetings, but for the other virtual events that we had been talking about for a couple of years and just had never sort of gotten the activation energy to get them off the planning table and into the implementation stage. And so I give Shavi Chauhan a lot of credit for that, because she was the one who said, let's do a COVID-19 webinar series. And then a lot of other things sort of, rolled from there, not the least of which was the virtual trainee Hangouts, which have been, very successful and sort of created a community of its own among our trainee members, but then all the other events that we've done as well. So I think that we've developed some new tools that we can use to deliver content of interest to our members, to our membership.
Yeah, it's a topic to just go over, because many of the issues that people find over planning for a meeting, individuals that are coming, we never deal with all of these big events being dealt with insurance and other things that we just don't deal with. So it's a great thing to actually listen to some of those, how they get affected. Now, moving forward, I know the next year it's the last EB. And so it's an exciting time for all of us coming into Philadelphia. So you're coming to Pennsylvania, which is great. But so this is our last question for you, but we appreciate your time. But we wanted to get a sense of, as a major implicator, that we are moving past COVID, we are trying to get in-person meetings. How do people get the most out of a meeting? What do you think someone going into a meeting and then now knowing that we didn't have it for a year, now we have it, we might have it again. What would be your advice for people going into these personal meetings?
Well, I think that, the beautiful part about where we are today with respect to the pandemic is the excellent rollout of the vaccines. And we hope that all of our members will be conscientious about being vaccinated so that they protect themselves and others. And I think that that's what's really going to allow us to come back to some sense of normalcy when we get to Philadelphia next year, because we've got, basically 11 months or so, 10, 11 months before we have that next meeting. And so we're looking forward to people actually being back face to face, where all of those really, really exceptionally valuable interactions take place in the hallways and at the receptions and at all of the other kinds of networking events, in addition to, just the delivery of the scientific content, the career development and educational kinds of opportunities. So I think that, we want people to certainly come back to the meeting and to be there and to be present and to rekindle those interactions. And of course, we're looking forward to meeting a lot of people for the first time in person who we've been interacting with quite extensively virtually for the past 18 months. So I think that there's going to be a lot of opportunities for people. And certainly at the next experimental biology meeting, we will have our Pathfinders program for those people who are coming to the meeting for the first time, where they can have a meeting mentor that will help them navigate the size of the meeting and whatnot. So it's going to be a good time.
Thank you, Dr. Coleman. We appreciated all your time and hope to see you in 2022.
You bet. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. All right, so we're ready for our next guest, right, Marina?
Yes, absolutely. It's so nice to be able to introduce Dr. Alexander Sougiannis. Alex is a fellow Greek, and he has a PhD from USC, and he's currently pursuing his MD. He's going to be talking to us today about traveling and vacation during COVID-19 and life outside the lab, maybe, or whatever that looks like during a pandemic and what it should look like after. So, hi, Alex, how are you?
Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So tell us a little bit about your experience during the pandemic, and did you get to travel during the pandemic?
Yeah, my experience in the pandemic, I was finishing my PhD, and that in itself was hard with everything just going virtual and people shutting down labs, and as everyone has experienced, things just getting much more difficult. I was planning on traveling after I finished my PhD and defended my dissertation, and unfortunately all those plans got canceled and all the airlines shut everything down, and so I ended up not traveling at all last summer, which was sort of my reward to myself for finishing my PhD. I was going to go and travel and go about Europe and things, and didn't really get the chance to do it.
Oh no, so you didn't get a reward for finishing your PhD? That's so horrible.
No, I only got my PhD for finishing my PhD. And then I got to go start med school after that. So
I guess that's something.
Yeah,
but,
no, I was really excited. Obviously it sort of, took a lot of the glamour and things out of it. I really wanted to have the audience to present to for my PhD and everyone there, and to talk with my mentors and celebrate with them. And it took a lot of the fun out of it to just defend to a computer screen that day, but it didn't take away sort of the purpose of what we were doing or anything. So I was really excited to finish and move on and do the things, but COVID definitely dampened the fun from it.
Yeah, I think I echo your sentiment, but I'm happy to be in Greece currently, so I at least got to travel. So did you have any traveling during the pandemic, or any type of activities like being even short trips or anything to take your mind off the COVID blues during the pandemic?
Yeah, so I try to compensate, as I don't know if you introduced, but I'm Greek, and I was going to go to Greece, and it had been 4 years since I'd been there, and a lot of family and everything there. So that was really sort of a gut check, sort of a punch to the gut, so to speak, of excitement and things, and all being taken away. But living in South Carolina, there's a lot of things that I can do. And, after having lived 7 years in South Carolina through a master's and PhD, I found sort of hidden gems to go to. So I was able to meet up with a friend of mine who was a resident up in Chapel Hill. And we rented out a cabin and got to go hiking and things during the summer. And then when I moved to Charleston after I finished my PhD to start med school, this is a vacation town. So I was going to the beach every day, and then I was traveling up and down the coast and just exploring new areas and finding things. So I made the most of it with that. It's of course not the Mediterranean and all of the fun that goes with it, but I tried to make the most out of it.
Nice, nice. And do you have any advice about the remaining part of the pandemic for international trainees? Like obviously making most of it is like, I think the best we can all do, but any specific advice for international trainees? And especially, how do you feel about international trainees in the field of medicine having to answer COVID-related questions back home? I don't know if you've had to deal with that, so I would appreciate your advice on that for sure.
Well, I mean, the physicians in Greece are excellent. They are way better experts on infectious disease than I am currently as an immunologist and as a second-year med student. But as far as traveling and things as an international trainee, I think, you know, the number one thing is get vaccinated, right? We know the vaccines work to a certain extent. We know that this is the beginning of how we're going to tackle this as a world, you know, towards, you know, ending this pandemic. And if you're vaccinated and if you feel safe and if you have a safe plan, do it. Because, you know, I think the pandemic really taught me that, you know, there's a lot that you miss, especially when you're training, especially when you're working really hard on your dissertation or your master's or med school or whatever it is that you're doing, whether you just started a new job. You know, as a PI, you know, family is really important, and family and friends, and especially as an international trainee, if where you're from, you haven't been there in a while, if you have the ability to go, do it 100%. Just make sure that you do the right things before you go.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Alex.
We have our next speaker, or our next guest, actually. Thank you, Alex, for being with us. We appreciate your input, and you're a great friend of the podcast, ASIP, and hopefully we get to see you in person hopefully soon. Thanks, Alex.
You too. Take care.
So we're also wanting to get some feedback from our Twitter feed. I don't know if Daisy, did we get any news or anything particular about a gift cards or anything?
Not just yet, but I will be releasing our first one shortly. Just a teaser, it will be the first person to tweet a GIF that represents how the pandemic made them feel. So you'll get to win a Starbucks gift card.
Yeah, I remember the first thing that we did after like our first episode, one of the first things that we talked about was vaccines, right? And now like everything that you see on TV and then you listen is like vaccines or is getting a new vaccine or everything ready. Do you guys feel the same way or more excited, less excited? Or what do you guys feel about vaccination now that we're going through like in the middle of it here in the US at least?
I'm pretty excited that more people are getting vaccinated. So then as we open up, it's safer for those that are like in the vulnerable status and maybe cannot be vaccinated themselves due to medical reasons.
Yeah. Did you get your...
I'm so grateful because my age group is only now starting to get vaccinated in Greece, and I'm fully vaccinated and I'm able to appreciate all the privileges of being able to do things again. So grateful is my overwhelming sentiment, absolutely.
I echo what Marina says. I'm so grateful because I think our first episode, we had talked about getting vaccinated and yeah, we were so fortunate to have been vaccinated quite early.
Yeah, it's been fantastic to actually learn how the different trajectories of people getting vaccinated and how much of that has grown over the last few months. So it's even greater to be involved in all of this when we're part of institutions that are leading some of these efforts. So that's great. I wanted to ask you guys as co-host, what's one of the things that you guys have done to remain in a mental status that is healthy and secure? I'll share mine, and then hopefully you guys have at least one that we can share. One of the things I've shared with my friends back home, and one of the things that have helped me sane, has been playing video games with my friends late at night. And that's been like a great resource for me to actually decompress, don't think a lot about all of these things that are happening. And it's been a great mediator of like having a conversation and having a violent video game in the middle of all of it. So, what about you guys?
I've been gardening a lot, and it's been great. I like being outside and I like growing my own food, it turns out. So that's been a pretty great blessing for me.
How about you guys?
I have been very interested in my hobbies that I never had time for, especially now getting out of my PhD. I find more time spending writing screenplays. So that has been my refuge during the pandemic. And I'm very happy to be pursuing that during my sabbatical right after my PhD.
Daisy?
Yeah, I've taken up gardening as well, so inspired by Vic. And yeah, I've been gifted many wonderful tomato seedlings and also some seeds. So I'm excited to see them grow, and I just love seeing things grow. It just makes me feel so good.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
All right, so I think we're ready for our next guest, who's Dr. Kari Nejak-Bowen. She's the assistant professor at University of Pittsburgh, and we're going to talk to her about beating the COVID blues and entering a healthy mental state as a faculty member. Welcome, Dr. Nejak-Bowen. How are you?
Good, Vic. How are you?
I'm good. Still nervous. I was hoping they would die down.
No. Well, you don't look nervous. You don't sound nervous. So I would have never known. I'm nervous too. Anytime I'm on camera, I get nervous.
Yeah. You think we would get used to it. We've had to do this whole pandemic virtually, but.
Right. But I think it's the recording thing that's throwing me off. I'm like, oh, this is going to be preserved for all time and I'm going to sound terrible. So let's.
No, everything sounds good.
Well,
thank you.
So how was your lab productivity and grantsmanship affected by the pandemic?
That's an interesting question. So, I mean, obviously, everything shut down in March, right? And so we had to kill off a lot of our mice. Our people couldn't come in, nobody could work. And then when we opened up in July, we opened up fully. So we were all allowed to come back to the lab. We had the social distancing protocols and the cleanliness protocols in place. But it really took us a long time to get back up and running. I think that stoppage, when you cut everything off right in the middle of what you're doing, you lose it mentally, you lose it physically. And so I think it took us probably about a year to really feel like we were back up and running the way we were pre-pandemic. So, it affected productivity, it affected us mentally. I think it was a hard road coming back. As far as grantsmanship went, I wrote a grant and submitted it and it didn't get a good score. So I'd like to say it's due to the pandemic, but I don't know if that's actually true.
Everything's due to the pandemic.
Yeah, well, we'll just blame everything on the pandemic. Maybe my writing skills just weren't up to par because I was distracted. I don't know.
I mean, it was a very distracting year for sure.
It was. And this work from home thing, I've heard some people were very productive. Some people wrote papers, some people wrote grants. They made the most of that time. I was one of the people that couldn't get anything done at home. And after a while, I stopped feeling guilty about it because it just wasn't something that I could punish myself with over and over. I had kids at home. They were learning virtually. So they were a drain on my time. I couldn't focus in my house. So I would go to work once a week and get like a week's worth of stuff done in one day. Even reviewing a manuscript was something that, you can do that in a day. It took me like an entire week at home because I kept getting interrupted. I couldn't focus. And so, but after a while, I learned to come to terms with that and just say, it's okay. I gave myself grace, I guess, because I know other people were probably going through the same. And it was a gradient. Some people were super productive and some people weren't productive at all. So
yeah, no, that's very true. I commend you for being able to forgive yourself. I think that that's something that a lot of us have a hard time doing. Like if we don't meet whatever deadlines, we're like, I should have been able to, instead of being like, oh, it's okay. Like you'll get it next time.
I had to, or else it was like, you can't live with this crushing guilt. So I kind of made a joke out of it. I'm like, I can't get it done. That's all there is to it,
Yeah, for sure. Were there other duties, such as like being part of committees, that were affected by the switch to a virtual platform and working from home?
I think if anything, those might have benefited in a lot of ways, because once we sort of got used to Zoom and how it works, like I think we were able to sort of tune in to seminars and meet with people that we wouldn't normally see virtually. I think all the committees that I were on and all the virtual meetings that I've gone to have gone really well. And they've been engaging and they've been interesting. And so I think that aspect of it may have benefited, and maybe even in the long term, you know, we'll continue to see those benefits of these virtual platforms. So yeah, I would say on the whole, that was a good experience. I'm the enrichment director for the Pittsburgh Liver Research Center. And so we had all of our seminars virtually. We were able to offer access to speakers that we normally never could have gotten. So, you know, speakers from Japan, speakers from Europe, speakers from China. And we were able to have more frequent seminars, and we'd have a lot of attendees. We'd have like 50 or 60 people log in and see these seminars, whereas in person, you might be able to draw like 20 or 25. So I think that was actually a benefit, is that we as at least as a liver center felt more connected.
Oh, that's great. That's a really nice silver lining. And
It was
for our last,
unexpected.
Unexpected, but nice.
Yeah.
For the last question, how was it as a mentor maintaining your relationship with your trainees during this pandemic?
That was difficult. So I had two trainees, one who was pretty advanced and actually just defended this past May, and one who actually just started in my lab. And so they had very different needs in terms of, you know, work-life balance and the projects they were on, you know. So, and at the time, all we could do was sort of, you know, communicate virtually during the shutdown. And then we came back and, you know, it was getting everybody back up to speed. And so, you know, I'd like to think, but you'd have to ask them that our relationship, that our communication didn't break down during that time, that we continued to communicate in any ways that we could. And I think that, you know, they both came through it okay. And they, you know, they didn't express any challenges to at least their research to me. So I'm hoping that, you know, the long-term effects are minimized.
Oh, great. Well, I'm glad that it seems to, even now it's over, so we don't have to deal with it anymore, hopefully, fingers crossed. But it seems like you've had a lot of like positives after this pandemic. So that's very exciting. So thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you giving us the faculty perspective and taking time out of your Friday to be with us.
No problem. Thanks for having me. This was great. Thanks.
Thank you. Hope we have to, we'll be able to host you in another different episode, hopefully.
I would love to participate again. This was great.
We will. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so we're almost halfway through the episode, and I think many of the highlights is many of these great people, scientists, researchers that we work with. I work with Dr. Nejak-Bowen. I work with Dr. Coleman. I work with many different people, as well as Daisy, with 5 different mentors that actually changed the perspective that we have over all of these things that are happening. And so one of the things that we want to focus is, again, yes, we're talking about COVID blues. Different people go through different aspects of it. I've heard from different people that have turned this unfortunate time into opportunity. Maybe some people looking to different research areas, move closer to family, all of those things. Have you guys done anything, any changes, particularly after COVID, that might have major implications? I know that Marina moved back home, but anything like that you guys think that you can share that are sort of like this premises of like, before COVID, I wouldn't have done it, but now I feel like I have to.
I would love to start. Like you said, I've moved back home. I definitely did not plan to take a break after my PhD before COVID, but now it became a priority. And I think that was the most important thing to me. I had to reevaluate my goals, and I had to actually take actions to put my desires and my aspirations more into my daily life. So anything that I was always convinced I don't have time for, it became a priority. So I finally got a puppy after wanting to have one for years. I spent more time with my hobbies. And of course, most importantly, I made the time to be with my family, which was something that I didn't have the opportunity to do as an international trainee for years. So I would say that reevaluating my goals and maybe realigning what I want with what my day looks like, that has been the most important effect the pandemic has had on me.
For me, I think I mostly focused on developing my career, which I guess is the opposite of what Verena did. And now I'm like, oh, maybe I should have done that. But I started volunteering more heavily with ASIP, and I joined other professional societies to sort of find this like sort of micro interaction that I used to have in person at conferences or in the lab virtually. And I've met so many new people. I met people that study the gut, and I'm like, that's super cool, like looking at you gut researchers, you know. So that was what I focused on.
Casey, do you have anything?
For me, I would say I'm a mix of the two. I have become more heavily involved in ASIP as well, with our podcast and the ASIP trainee Hangouts. It's been really fun. But at the same time, I've also become better at cooking. I am really into cooking now. So yeah, and that's been forced upon me because of the pandemic, I think. And actually, I'm really grateful for that, because now I have all these recipes up my sleeve, so I can feed myself easily. So yeah, that's a blessing in disguise from the pandemic.
Yeah, that's also something good to learn new skills. And I think most of us, like Pri said, I think the list of things I wanted to do, like February 2019, or when was it, 2020? I can't remember now. And then the real things that I actually did, I mean, they're pretty much like just, I only crossed like one or two. But I have to say, like for me, it was being home more. It's a blessing that I hadn't thought of, but like I have a 2-year-old that I didn't have that much time with my first son when I was doing my master's degree and then doing the postdoc. I mean, I was pretty out. So this year really gave me some time to actually have like serious time with each of them. So like learning what they like, what they don't like. We learned different shows that I didn't even know they were watching. Things that our Netflix was like a mystery to me. But yeah, it was a like a blessing. And I think also moving closer to people, we've gotten closer to people here. We built like a network. I know more people here. It's one of our guests that is coming. She's one of our personal friends, and yeah, that's one of the things that I've learned from all of this. Thank you guys for sharing. So I think we'll go with our next guest. I think Daisy.
Yeah, I'm delighted to introduce our next guest, who is actually my lab mate currently, Emmanuella Nnuji-John. So please welcome her. She just graduated her Bachelor of Science from Alcorn State University, which is super exciting, and she'll be giving us the trainee perspective. So welcome, Ella. The first question I have for you is, what was it like going through college during a pandemic?
Thank you so much for the welcome, Daisy. I'm really excited to meet everybody, and I'm really honored to be here. College through the pandemic was really different. It's like everyone had to switch up what they were doing. The world as we know it was basically ending, and so everything had to change. And so, you know, we struggled for a bit. The first 2 months, we weren't able to go back to campus. Everything was shut down. Students who were volunteering in labs and volunteering in hospitals for their applications to school and stuff like that, everything was basically shut down. And so, yeah, it was quite a learning experience. Teachers had to unlearn and relearn how to teach in more accessible ways for people who probably didn't have technology. And it was a lot, but we got through, and I'm really glad that experience happened, because now we know that we don't have to be in person all the time. There's so many things that we can do online, and we don't have to travel just to do things.
Yeah, and it was so awesome that you could still have a graduation ceremony, which like some people missed out on, but I loved your graduation photos.
Thank you. Yes, it was really, we weren't sure if that was going to happen. Some students had to, students representing the student body had to kind of, put a word in to the university and tell them what we wanted to do. And the university made it work for us. We had to be socially distanced on the field. And yeah, a lot of other universities did do this as well, I find. And I'm glad that people, while some people didn't get to have this experience and they did it online, I'm really glad that we were able to have that experience.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to tell the audience was that Emmanuella will be starting her PhD shortly in the fall at Cold Spring Harbor. So that's super exciting. Tell us about applying for grad school during the pandemic. It must have been quite challenging.
Yes, applying for grad school during the pandemic was really an uncertain, well, it was filled with so much uncertainty. We weren't sure how the interviews were going to be. We weren't able to check out the university campuses to see what our potential school would look like. We had to do everything online. But like I said before, everyone kind of had to find new ways of doing things. And it was really funny and fun to see how schools like adjusted for interviews. Some schools had little like avatar videos where we could just pop into a room and pop out. We used Zoom a lot. Some schools tried to be more creative and do things outside of Zoom. And yeah, it was really nice to see how things could work in a virtual setting, something super important like that. It was a lot sitting down in front of a screen talking about your research for hours and hours on end. But yeah, it was exciting. Yeah, it was really exciting.
And also the ASIP, the final question we have for you is, it's such a delight to have you as part of the ASIP Summer Research Opportunity Program. How is it, during a pandemic, how is it volunteering your time at a different lab?
So right now things are kind of opening up a little bit. And so students are able to have access to these facilities that we need. And so I'm really grateful for the ASIP Summer Student Fellowship that I was awarded. And through that fellowship, I'm able to volunteer in a lab while being able to, I guess, finance my accommodation in the new city. And so, yeah, it's been an amazing experience. I've had to learn how to do things online, just like everyone else, doing data analysis and also doing a lot of literature reviews to kind of approach research questions in, new ways outside of the bench or the lab. And so, yeah, it's been really cool.
Yeah, it's so great to have you in the lab, and I'm so excited that we still have a few more weeks together before you leave me. But yeah, all the best for your the next chapter as well when you do move on to your PhD. Thanks again for being part of this.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So as part of our last guest, I'd like to introduce and I'll wait for her to be actually in the call because I want her to hear what I'm going to say. She is a friend, mentor, associate professor at the University of Pittsburgh. She created 2 companies. She is the recipient of the Emerging Innovator Award here in Pittsburgh, mother of 2, personal friend. I don't know what else to say. Hey, hi, Cecilia.
Hello, thank you. Thank you all for having me.
So Cecilia, we have a couple of questions for you. You are a leader in the American Society of Investigative Pathology and many other societies. And someone that I value your opinion, and we want to share some of your experiences pre-COVID and post-COVID about mental health. So our question is very specific. Has at any stage in your career, any professional comment, any professional reviewer, grant reviewer ever affected your mental health importantly?
Uh-oh, I think your question cut off.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, what I was meant. So at any stage during your professional career, any professional review or grantsmanship, any comment that has ever affected your mental health pre or post COVID?
Absolutely. Pretty much every time I get a rejection from a grant or a paper. But the thing is to be able to understand how to compartmentalize and place it, right? I think all of our gut reactions when someone tells us we're not as great as we think we are, or for something that we spend a lot of time and effort in that, it just didn't meet the test, but the level of which it needed to, it takes a toll, especially constantly. And even with the successes, you have those failures, and mental health and recognizing that it affects your mental health, I think is the best way to combat that, and just understand that failures, make successes. And from every failure, you can bounce back. And how you handle that is really a sign of, strength, as well as good mental health practices.
Yeah, you're totally right. I think those major things affect us professionally, but also personally, and they'll transmit into our mental health. And during COVID has been even more important. So following that trend, during this whole process, how do you balance your professional life and having a good mental health?
Yeah. Well, I have to confess, I am on the side of being a non-believer that there is actually work-life balance, especially in our profession. I do think that it's very difficult to separate one from the other. When you have a grant due on Monday, how do you take the weekend off? When you have stuff going on in the lab in the middle of the night, how do you, separate that? So, I remember a model that someone gave me, or, something someone told me when I was in undergrad: work hard, play hard. And the best way to, I feel, for, this work for me, is to think about, embracing what's going on in the moment, but not letting any of those moments overcome your entire existence, right?
Yeah.
You get rejected on a grant, you get rejected, embrace that moment, but don't take that into your entire weekend while you're with your family and things like that. Just, try to have some separation from the moment, but they will integrate into each other. And, keep doing a check-in, have good colleagues and good friends that you can speak with and vent, but also that build you up and encourage you and let you know that, yeah, that was your comment. Guess what? I had one word. So, so you're not alone. There are a lot of things that I think you can do to help with your mental health. But the first thing is just acknowledging that what we do affects us mentally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's totally true. And Cecilia, you were the first person that I really spoke to at a conference. I was like really lost at that first ASIP meeting, so you gave me great advice. So now, dealing with mental health, you already told us a couple of things. If there was something that you would have to tell someone that's dealing with a mental health crisis, that's dealing with a COVID blues, what would that be?
I think, reach out. Everyone is different. So I don't think there's this blanket recipe on how to handle your mental health, right? Some of us did very well being at home and on Zoom all day, and some of us, we really struggled. And so I don't think that there's this, this one piece of advice, but I would say, and I know I've kind of said it in other ways already, be open. Don't think that describing what you're going through is some taboo or makes you weak or won't allow you to move forward, or people will think differently. Be vulnerable, right? It takes away, sometimes when you expose what's going on with you, you take away the vulnerability of it. And so that's how you deal with what's going on and get help and talk to others to see that you're not alone. So dealing with the COVID blues is, I think, get a community of folks who you trust and that you can tell them what's going on and be honest about it, because it's nothing wrong, right? It's nothing wrong. Everything we do has a place to in hurting or affecting our mental health. So I'm here to say, take the sting out of it and talk to whoever you can.
Yeah, that's a great advice. Thank you, Cecilia, for being a part of it. I know that you're really busy, but you always take the time to like mentor and train other people and give some good advice. So we thank you for being in the podcast. Hopefully we'll have you again for another episode. We have many coming in, so hopefully we'll get to do another interview about your many accomplishments.
Well, I just want to give a shout out to you guys. This is great. I'm a huge fan. I think this is wonderful, and keep up the good work. I look forward to your other episodes.
Thank you. Thank you. So Marina, we're going to go with your interview. You want to introduce that section?
Absolutely, Roberto. So a few days ago, I was very happy to have a great conversation with Dr. Ruchama Steinberg, or Ru, as I got to call her when I first met her at EB 2021. We got to discuss a lot about mental health, and the full interview is going to be coming out in our podcast, but we have like a teaser section that we can share with you today. Ru is the executive director of Dragonfly Mental Health, a nonprofit focusing on mental health in academia.
All right, there you go.
A little bit more about your background and where you work.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York in the States, and recently moved to Israel. I did my undergrad degree in CUNY Brooklyn College in biology, a Bachelor of Science, as well as minoring in creative writing. And I did my PhD in cellular and molecular medicine at Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine. And I am currently the executive director at Dragonfly Mental Health, which is a nonprofit organization that is dedicated to cultivating excellent mental health in academics worldwide. And yeah, some advice I have, especially to those who are, trying to transition from maybe work at home to back to the lab, redefine your definition of success. I think it's really important to give yourself a break, to understand that you have gone through sort of a once in a lifetime experience of a pandemic. It's incredibly stressful for so many different reasons. You're worried about your loved ones. It could be financial situations, the delay in your research or in lab work. But realize that your reaction to all of that is normal. It's normal to be anxious. It's normal to be stressed. It's normal to even feel a little depressed without all of the normal social interaction that you're used to. It's really interesting. In our last Dragonfly Journal Club, we looked at a paper that talked about, statistics of how students and people in academia have been affected by COVID. And the group that was most affected is the 18 to 24 year age group. Some of the advice I have for transitioning back into the space of being in the lab, talk to your advisor and set really clear expectations of what's expected of you now. How often do they expect you to be in the lab with whatever regulations your university has put in place? But definitely talk to your advisor, set really clear expectations, set small goals for yourself that your advisor is aware of, so you're keeping on track, to what they're expecting of you as well. I think part of the stress is the feeling of being overwhelmed of all of the, the things you now have to do. You're back at lab, and you're not quite sure whether you have to go full force right back into it, or you can slowly ease your way into it. So when you have that conversation with your mentors, with your advisors, it gives you that sense of security that you're on the same page, that you're not, that you're meeting their expectations as well, and that you're both really clear communication-wise on both ends.
Yeah, I think communication is so important. And even when you don't meet the small goals that you said, that is also okay. Like you said, it's okay if you're not doing as well as you used to. It should be expected given what we're all going through. And I think I read somewhere that, like, unless you have suffered through the pandemic because you yourself got sick, or a family member got sick or died, or have experienced job loss, it's easy to underestimate the effect the pandemic has had on others.
They've shown that people with higher IQs have a higher rate of mood disorders. And so, you know, the people who are doing their PhDs are generally of the higher IQ, you know, bracket. And so we're already in that space of needing to be cognizant that the culture should no longer be, you know, I went through this, so you have to go through this. We should hopefully really see a shift in the mentality towards more of a, I had a hard time, so I'm going to find ways to make you have an easier time. And I think that should be really the mantra for mental health reform in academia. Being part of the conversation, that you learn, oh, like that sounds like me. That sounds like what I'm experiencing, you know? So it's having the conversation, fighting the stigma. I mean, exactly what you were saying, there are so many people who think, oh, if I have a mental health issue or a mental health disorder, then I won't be successful. And that's what our Fighting Stigma campaign is all about, identifying people within academic communities who are at the highest levels of their career, you know, well-respected, successful Nobel Prize laureates who have professed to having a mental health disorder, either anxiety or depression or any number of things. And then when they start to disclose that kind of information and students see like, wow, this person that I respect so highly, you know, they struggle like I've struggled and they've been able to be successful, maybe I can also be successful. And that's part of it too, you know, just having more of an open two-way conversation, that it's you know, people having mental health struggles is in no way disqualifying for anybody to reach the highest echelons of their field.
That was some great advice. I think every time that we hear more and more about this, it gets more common, and that's what the conversation should be focused on. So I think it was a great interview, and hopefully we'll be posting the whole segment. So whoever's interesting, I mean, I will be certainly looking after it, and I think most of us are advocates for all of those. Vic, Daisy, what do you guys have gotten through like with the gift cards? Do we have some winners?
Yeah, we have a lot of activity on our Twitter, which is so awesome. Thank you everyone for tweeting and tagging us. Because I said it was the first one, I'm gonna have to go with the first one and do it. And I'll have to give the first one to Gina Laborde, the amazing Gina Laborde. So she tweeted a gift that represents how the pandemic made her feel, and it's from one of my favorite shows, Arrested Development. It's when the son like has his head down and walks and everybody gets sad. So yeah, definitely have to give that one to Gina. So Gina, you'll be expecting a Starbucks gift card. And we have some more. Vic will announce our next one.
All right, so our next one, which was the first one, where are you going to go when you get to travel after this pandemic, goes to Kristen Enjevek. She said that Egypt is calling to her. She posted a nice gif of some camels just resting in the red sand. It looked beautiful. So make sure to DM us your address so that we can send these gift cards out.
And we'll have a couple of other questions so that we can give away the other 3 gift cards. So we'll post it on our social media.
We have two more.
We have 2 more. Okay.
We have another. The next one is a positive that came out of the pandemic. And it has to go to Peju, who is also known as AFOCYTE, I believe. Mask on AFOCYTE, AFOCYTE. And she, one positive is her sweatsuit collection. So that is fantastic. So okay. Yeah, most deserving of a Starbucks gift card.
Okay, so we have 2 post episodes so that we can post them through Twitter, and we'll let them know directly by Twitter.
And then the last one that we got during this episode was what can we blame the pandemic for, was Sophia Blessinger, and she blamed her organic chemistry grade to the pandemic. So I feel you, although I didn't take organic chemistry during the pandemic, but my grade suffered for sure.
I don't know how to describe having a live episode. I mean, I don't even know when an hour started ago. So that nervous breakdown that you might have before and after, it's just gone. So just to close and our final thoughts, let's go around and give our final ideas about all of this. It's an important topic. I'll go to my left. What about you, Beck? What do you think?
I think it's important to make sure that you have a community that you talk to and recognize what you need and put that first. It's easy to get bogged down with like things that we should have done or wish we had done during the pandemic, and it's time to let that all go. That's my final thought.
How about you, Daisy?
Mine is one biggest takeaway from the pandemic would have to be learn to be adaptable and just go with the flow, like whatever happens. Don't freak out too much. Freak out a little bit maybe, but we'll get through it together, and sort of just like trusting that, you know, as humankind, we will make it through this pandemic.
Marina.
I guess for me, the most important thing was to learn to appreciate what I have while I have it. And also, I think a lesson I learned is to look for resources that can help me when I need to. Like, for example, for mental health, now we know so many resources that we can reach out to and get advice. Also, listen to people share their stories. I feel that is very important, and at least I didn't get to have that so much before the pandemic. Now I appreciate that so much. So that's definitely a takeaway from COVID for sure.
Thank you, Marina. And I think for me, it's almost on the same sentiment. The pandemic gave me a new job, gave me my first faculty position, is giving us a lot of grief. Lost some relatives that I couldn't be there if I wanted to. It gave me some limitations, but I think in light of it, going through the whole process about the vaccination and even thinking about the promise that science is still leading the way, it's never going to go away. I think that listens to a lot of our advocacy here. So with that, we're going to thank all of you guys. I mean, thank you for the live episode. I'm pretty sure it's not going to be the last one we do. It was pretty fun. We thank you guys for your interaction, for your time. Thank you for making this podcast. At least we have this live episode to actually look forward to the new, or the rest of us for the new episode. So keep following us, keep listening, keep up with your followers. We'll have a new episode by August. We have a couple of big and exciting interviews coming up. So thank you, everyone, and thanks for tuning in.